We are all selfish beings and we all have biases, and our selfishness and our biases might be impeding our ability to improve our society. But how do we get beyond that? Well, a certain moral and political philosopher, he had some ideas. Today we're going to be talking about the Battle of the Johns. In the left corner, John Rawl. In the right corner, John Harsanyi. These two power punches collided in the 1970s in an exploration of what is one of the most fascinating thought experiments in political philosophy. So today we're going to dive into that thought experiment and examine Rawls's justifications for why he felt that we would do what we would do. And then we'll look at a couple of Harsanyi's counterpunches. Okay. Imagine you are being sucked out of your body as this ethereal ghost of who you are, with all of your knowledge and experience, and then you get blown all the way into outer space and you see the same ethereal ghosts of every person on Earth coming with you as you all get blown away by this wind, as if the Earth itself just exhaled. And there you get met by this godlike being, this terrifyingly powerful being. And this godlike being assembles all of the people on Earth, all of these disembodied spirits before him. And this being says that the structure of society as we know it is now gone, that we will be placed at random into new bodies, that we might be children, we might be old people, we might be 45, we might be white, we might be black, we might be brown, we might be female, we might be male, we might be something in between. We might be rich, we might be poor, we might be middle income. We might have health conditions. We might be healthy. We might resume life in the desert. We might resume life in the jungle. We might resume life in the city or a suburb. As variable as the human experience is, we might be reinserted into any one of these combinations. And here is the big kicker. We don't know in advance what our destination is going to be. So as we look down on the blue globe before us, the only home that we have ever known, we are told that we don't know what the circumstances are that we might resume life on Earth as. A veil then comes to cloud over our view of Earth. We all feel this pang of anxiety, our home so familiar, so comforting, even in this moment, in this most bizarre and uncomfortable of experiences. It's been taken away from us. And the feeling that we all feel the most is that we need to get it back. And this great godlike being, it impresses upon us that if we want to return to life on Earth, we now have a duty as a collective of billions of disembodied spirits to draft a new society for life on Earth. That we must propose, vote, and agree upon a society and a system for our new remade civilization on planet Earth. It won't look like the old one. How could it? We don't even know where we're going to be reborn. And so humanity's collective spirit splits into manageable, governable chunks. Little groups of us vote, and that vote gets carried by a foreperson to a greater assembly, where that assembly also votes all the way up to the grand assembly of humanity. And this process, we are told, is not to be rushed. And the great unfathomable being almost seems to take delight in reminding us that for once, our selfishness is to be embraced. Because we don't know what our personal circumstances are going to look like. And so, how do we vote? What kind of society do we want to live in if we don't know where we're going to end up? That is what is called the original position, and the veil that clouds the earth with it, our knowledge of where we might end up, that is called the veil of ignorance. I've got a confession to make. I've always voted selfishly. I vote for what's best for me, my friends and my family, and what's best for the country. Well, where that aligns with what's best for me, my friends and my family, fantastic. Where it doesn't, sorry, I'm looking out for number 1, 2, 3, 4, etc. But that is exactly what gives this thought experiment so much power, because whether we like to admit it or not, none of us can fully divorce ourselves from our self-interest. And anyone that tells you otherwise, well, they're either Peter Singer or a liar. The thought experiment uses our self-interest to achieve the very thing that blinds us to creating a fair society. But the thing that we notice as we sit there in our groups in outer space, watched over by this vast, unfathomable being, is that all of our irrationalities have disappeared. All of the things that blinded us to the rational are at least temporarily gone. Furthermore, the great being endows us all with a clarity of thought, such that we are all, at least for the time being, intelligent and creative in thought. Now, from this newfound clarity and rationality of thinking, John Rawl figures that we would quickly agree upon a principle for our new society, the liberty principle. That all humans on Earth should have access to the same basic liberties: voting, due process under law, the right not to be discriminated against. After all, we don't know where we're going. Why would we want to be on the wrong side of any unfair treatment by the state or society? The next principle that Rawls proposes that we would all agree upon is that if there were to be any inequalities of any sort in our society, we would agree that there should be equality of opportunity to achieve any station in life, i.e. a true meritocracy. People of equal abilities, regardless of where they start, should have the same opportunity to achieve their life goals. If someone wants to be president or prime minister, it shouldn't matter whether they're the poor son or daughter of a coal miner any more than the son or daughter of a former president. Then Rawls kicks it up a notch. He says that we would have to agree that any unequal distribution of wealth in society would have to benefit the bottom rung of the ladder the most. The inequality aspect of it, it's a reasonable admission. In order for society to succeed, you have to reward individuals differently for different things. You have to incentivize people to be doctors and lawyers and engineers. Even the likes of Lenin learned that the hard way. And so our collective disembodied spirits start to create models of societal structures that we might vote on. And Rawls says that we would want to vote for a society that has the best outcome for the group that draws the short straw. We would want to maximize the minimum gain, or as Rawls terms it, maximum. And to be fair to Rawls, when rationality is assumed, we do see this general idea happen a lot in decision-making behaviour under risk. It's called hedging your bets. It's part of the reason why mutual funds and ETFs are so popular. It's why investment advisors' bread and butter is telling you that you need to diversify your investments. And so, returning to our thought experiment, we as a collective managed to come up with 4 possible economic alignments. And on average, these are the groupings for our society in terms of inequality. Under the uncertainty of the veil, Rawls reckons that we would pick society B. But is Rawls correct in assuming that that's what we as rational actors would do? Nobel Prize-winning economist John Harsanyi, one of the guys who came up with this thought experiment in the first place, thought that maybe not. Harsanyi was a utilitarian, i.e. he believed that the best action or decision in a particular situation is the one that brings the most advantages to the most people. Now, Harsanyi believed that perfectly rational disembodied spirits would instead choose a society that maximised their expected utility, that we wouldn't just seek to minimise our worst outcome, particularly if we'd agreed upon the liberty principle first of all, that we might in fact pick a society which did have worse outcomes for the lowest rung of the ladder, if it gave us the greatest chance of maximising our expected returns. Even if that meant that we could feasibly roll a natural 1 on the dice and end up living in a mud hut, walking 10 miles to get fresh water. To illustrate why Harsanyi feels that maximum doesn't hold up, he uses a rather compelling analogy. Imagine you're between jobs, and by luck or skill, you've managed to secure 2 job offers. One job requires you to stay in the city that you're in, and it's okay. It's actually a bit of a downgrade on what you previously had. And it's kind of boring work too, and costs are going up in your city. But it's a job, And the best part is that it's right around the corner from where you live, so you don't have to drive or take transport. The other option is that you take a plane flight tomorrow for a much better job. This one is stimulating and the benefits are great. It's a huge step up for you. But you have to take that flight in order to secure it. And you know, there's a very small but non-zero chance that you could be involved in an aviation accident that closes the ledger on your life. So the worst outcome for the job in your current city is that you get bored doing it. But the worst outcome for the great job in the other city is that you're no longer here to enjoy it at all. Harsanyi uses this analogy to show that Maximin is not always the rational choice, because under Maximin, we would have to take the boring job in our own city. We couldn't pick the job that allows for a potentially dire outcome. But that proposition is ridiculous, says Harsanyi. The probability of crashing is so low and the upside of the job so good that the vast majority of us wouldn't think twice about taking the good job. And here Harsanyi might be pushing his luck, but he says that if you were really committed to Maximin, you wouldn't even cross a busy intersection. Life is filled with inherent risks, but that doesn't stop rational people from taking risks. We drive to work every day. To illustrate this point further, Harsanyi asks us to imagine that we've been offered a bet that we don't have to put any money up, but either we get $100 if candidate X wins, or nothing if he loses. And it would be irrational not to take the bet, since you've got nothing to lose and potentially $100 to gain. So now you must choose. Harsanyi says that we can infer that whichever you choose, you've made a subjective probability judgment that there is a 50-50 or greater chance of winning. This he then extends to the Maximin principle, saying that any decision maker following it can't really avoid making, at the minimum, an implicit choice based on subjective probability. He says that even if we don't know, we will make inferences. And in making inferences, we're going to choose a society that maximizes our expected utility. The society that will be the best for us on average. And honestly, I don't think I'm equipped to tell you who's right and who's wrong here. Maybe it's down to a difference in outlook. Perhaps two people can have rational, valid, and sound arguments that are opposing. But what kind of implication does that have for those of us sitting above earth under the veil of ignorance? Perhaps not everybody can have their way, much like our democracies at present. Perhaps the notion alone undermines Rawl's conclusion about Maximin. But then maybe it's enough that he gets you to think about it. What would our society be if we had to start from scratch and if we didn't know where we would end up? What would you want society to look like? Well, that's all for today. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, you can do me a massive favor by hitting that subscribe button. And if you want to see more of my content, here's a couple of videos to my right. Well, it's actually my left, but it's your right. You can check those out right this minute, and if you're a curious person, I think you should. Until next time, folks.